The bell above the door didn't just ring, it shrieked. To Elias, the sound was no longer a welcoming chime of a potential customer, but the physical sensation of a hook dragging across his exposed nerve endings. It was 3 in the morning. The city of Okovan was asleep, draped in a heavy, comforting fog, but the light in Elias's workshop was still burning, casting long frantic shadows against walls coated in decades of soot. Elias was a mender. Not just of clocks, or shoes, or fences, but of situations. If a carriage wheel broke on the edge of town, Elias was the one they woke up. If a wedding dress was torn an hour before the ceremony, Elias was the one holding the needle with trembling hands. If a dispute broke out between the baker and the butcher, Elias was the mediator, absorbing the anger of both sides until they left smiling, leaving him with a headache that throbbed like a second heartbeat behind his eyes. He held the delicate porcelain of Mrs. Gable's antique vase in his hands. It had shattered into 40 distinct pieces. "It needs to be ready by sunrise," she had said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that felt like syrup masking poison. "You're the only one who can do it, Elias, you never let us down." That was the curse, the sentence that had built the cage around him. You never let us down. His hands, stained with glue and trembling from caffeine and exhaustion, struggled to align a shard no bigger than a grain of rice. His vision blurred. The air in the workshop tasted stale, recycled, heavy with the scent of sawdust and old varnish. He hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days because the miller needed his fence painted, and the mayor needed the town hall records organized, and his sister needed someone to watch her children. Elias had said yes to all of them. He had said yes until the word lost all meaning and became nothing more than a reflex, a knee-jerk reaction to the terrifying possibility of silence. If he wasn't useful, who was he? If he wasn't available, would he even exist? A heavy knock rattled the oak door, vibrating through the floorboards and up into his spine. Elias froze. The glue on his thumb began to dry, tacky and irritating. He looked at the window. It was pitch black outside. Who could possibly be knocking now? "Elias, I saw your light," a voice boomed from the street. It was Brom, the blacksmith. Brom was a good man, loud and boisterous, but he had the emotional awareness of an anvil. Elias didn't move, he held his breath, praying the shadows would swallow him. "Go away," he thought, the words screaming in his mind. "Please, just go away. I have nothing left to give. Elias, my furnace bellows have split. I have an order for the Royal Guard due at noon. I need your stitching all and those quick fingers of yours." The silence in the shop stretched, taut as a bowstring. Elias looked at the vase. He looked at the pile of unread letters on his desk, demands for his time masquerading as requests. He looked at the half-eaten apple turning brown on the windowsill. He walked to the door. Of course he walked to the door. The mechanism in his brain that allowed for refusal had over years ago. He unlocked the latch, the click sounding like a gunshot in the quiet room, and opened the door. Brom stood there, his face streaked with soot, looking frantic. "Thank the stars," Brom breathed, pushing past Elias without waiting for an invitation. "I didn't know who else to turn to. You're always up, you're always here." "I'm working on Mrs. Gable's vase," Elias whispered as Riceby. "It's due at sunrise." "This will only take an hour," Brom insisted, already clearing a space on Elias's workbench, sweeping aside delicate clock gears that clattered to the floor. Elias flinched as if he'd been struck. "Come on, Elias. The Royal Guard. If I lose this contract, I'm ruined." "You wouldn't want that on your conscience, would you?" There it was. The leverage. The emotional blackmail that wasn't malicious, but was deadly effective. The assumption that Elias's time was a public resource, a communal well that everyone was entitled to draw from. "An hour," Elias said, defeated. He picked up his awl. It took 3. By the time Brom left, slapping Elias on the back with a gratitude that felt like a physical weight, the sun was beginning to bleed gray light through the grime of the windows. The vase sat unfinished. The glue had hardened into useless lumps. Elias stared at the mess on his table. His chest felt tight, a band of iron constricting his lungs. He sat down on his stool, the wood groaning under him. He picked up the central piece of the vase, the one that held the painted image of a bluebird. He looked at his reflection in the curved porcelain. He looked gray. Not just tired, drained. His eyes were sunken, hollowed out by the relentless siphon of other people's needs. He realized then that he couldn't remember the last time he had done something solely for himself. Not a favor, not a job, not an obligation. He couldn't remember the last time he had simply sat and watched the rain, or read a book, or walked to the river. He was a ghost in his own life, haunting the edges of everyone else's stories. The bell rang again. It was Mrs. Gable. She was early. Elias stood up, but his legs didn't cooperate. The room tilted violently to the left. The floor rushed up to meet him. He didn't feel the impact of his knees hitting the wood, nor did he feel the porcelain shard slicing into his palm as he caught himself. All he felt was a sudden, overwhelming coldness. The door opened. "Elias, is it ready? The sun is up," Mrs. Gable chirped, bustling in with her basket of fresh bread, a trade, she called it. Though a loaf of bread for 12 hours of skilled ration was a robbery she smiled through. She stopped when she saw him on the floor. "Oh dear," she said. "Not are you okay? Not call a doctor." She said, "Oh dear. Don't tell me you dropped it." Elias looked up at her from the floor. The blood from his hand was pooling on the dusty floorboards, a bright crimson against the brown. He tried to speak, tried to apologize, tried to explain that the bellows took longer than expected, that he was so sorry. But his voice was gone. His throat had closed up. "Elias!" She stepped closer, peering over his slumped form to look at the workbench. "You haven't even finished gluing the neck. This is unacceptable. I told everyone you were reliable. I vouched for you." The room began to spin faster. The sounds of the waking city outside, the carts, the merchants, the barking dogs, merged into a deafening roar. It was the sound of the world demanding entry. The sound of a million tiny hooks sinking into his skin. He wanted to scream. He wanted to pick up the hammer and smash the rest of the vase. He wanted to tell Mrs. Gable that he didn't care about her pottery or her reputation. But he couldn't. He just lay there, the darkness creeping into the edges of his vision. "Well," Mrs. Gable huffed, "I suppose I'll have to take it to the city. I expected better of you, Elias. Really, after all we've done for you. After all we've done for you." The phrase echoed in the emptiness of his mind as he lost consciousness. They had done nothing for him but take. They had carved him up, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a shell holding a set of tools. Elias woke up in a place that was not his workshop. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and pine needles. The roar of the city was gone, replaced by the rhythmic, gentle sound of water lapping against stone. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to a soft, green light. He was lying on a simple cot in a round stone room. There were no windows, but light filtered down from an opening high above, where vines dangled like emerald curtains. "You've been asleep for 3 days," a voice said. Elias trying to sit up, but a firm hand pushed him back down. "Easy, Weaver. You have no thread left in your spool. Try to stand, and you'll unravel completely." The figure stepped into the light. It was an old man, skin the color of polished mahogany, wearing robes made of coarse, undyed wool. He held a wooden cup that steamed with a pungent herbal tea. Where am I?" Elias croaked. "The vase, Mrs. Gable." The old man laughed, a dry, cracking sound like leaves shifting in autumn. "The vase is dust. Mrs. Gable is likely complaining to her cat. And you are in the quiet, the place between the noise. I have to go back." Elias panicked, his heart racing. "I have orders, Brahms bellows, the mayor's books." "Why?" the old man asked. The question hung in the air, simple and devastating. Because they need me," Elias stammered. "Do they?" The old man sat on a wooden stool sipping his tea. "Or do they need a convenient solution to their inconveniences? There is a difference, Elias. A tool is needed. A man is loved. Which one are you?" Elias stared at the stone ceiling. The tears came hot and fast, leaking from the corners of his eyes into his hair. "I don't know," he whispered. "I don't know how to be anything else. If I say no, they'll leave, they'll hate me." The old man leaned forward, his eyes sharp and terrifyingly clear. "Let them." "What?" "Let them hate you," the old man said, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to vibrate through the stone. "Let them be disappointed. Let the vases stay broken. Let the fences rot. You are dying, Elias. You are pouring your blood into their cups and wondering why you are anemic. You think you are being kind. No. You are being a coward." The word struck Elias harder than any blow. Coward. "It takes no courage to say yes," the old man said sternly. "It is the easiest thing in the world to surrender. To roll over. To give away your time so you don't have to face the terror of your own worth. It takes courage to say no. To stand in the fire of their disappointment, and not burn." The old man stood up and walked to the wall, where a large, ornate mirror hung. But the glass was black, reflecting nothing. "You are here because you broke," the old man said. "Your body shut down because your spirit refused to take another step. You have a choice. You can go back, fix the vase, apologize to the town, and be dead within a year. Or, you can learn the art of the gatekeeper." Elias asked. "Your life is a castle," the old man said, gesturing around the stone room. "But you have taken the doors off the hinges. You let anyone walk in with muddy boots, track dirt on your carpets, eat your food, and sleep in your bed. And you thank them for it." He threw a heavy iron key onto the cot. It landed on Elias's chest with a dull thud. "If you want to survive," the old man said, You must learn to lock the door. Even when they are pounding on it. Even when they are screaming your name. Even when it breaks your heart. Elias gripped the cold iron key. He thought of the bell above his shop door. The shriek of it. The terror of the knock. Teach me, Elias whispered. The old man smiled, but there was no warmth in it yet, only the grim satisfaction of a surgeon about to make a necessary incision. Rest now, he said. Tomorrow we build the walls. The lessons began not with words but with stones. For the first week, the old man, who simply called himself the keeper, made Elias build a wall across the entrance of the round room. This is your time, the keeper said, pointing to a pile of jagged rocks. Every stone represents an hour of your life. Place them carefully. If you stack them haphazardly because you are rushing to please me, the wall will fall and crush you. Elias worked until his fingers bled, the same way they had in his workshop. He rushed. He tried to build the wall quickly to show the keeper how useful he was. And every single time, the wall collapsed. You are building for my approval. The keeper observed, watching the stones tumble. You are not building for the integrity of the wall. Build it again, and this time if I ask you to hurry, ignore me. It was the hardest thing Elias had ever done. The keeper would stand behind him, tapping his foot impatiently, sighing loudly, sometimes even shouting, "Faster, Elias! The sun is setting, I need this done now!" Elias's instinct was to panic, to scramble, to compromise the foundation to meet the demand. But he remembered the feeling of the coal floor in his shop. He remembered the taste of copper in his mouth. He took a deep breath, slowed his hands, and ignored the shouting. He placed one stone. Then another. He checked the balance. He cemented it with patience. When the wall was finally finished, solid and immovable, the keeper stopped shouting. He walked up to the wall, kicked it with all his strength, and nodded when it didn't even shudder. "Good," the keeper said softly. "Now you understand. The quality of your work depends on your refusal to be rushed. Your no protects your ras." They spent a month in the quiet. Elias learned that energy was a currency. And he had been leaving his purse open on the street. He learned that guilt was a manipulation tool, used by those who benefited from his lack of boundaries. He learned that the people who got angry when he set a boundary were the ones who were profiting from him having none. Then came the day the keeper handed him his satchel. "It is time," the old man said. "I'm not ready," Elias said, fear spiking in his chest. "I like it here, it's safe, there is no bell. A ship is safe in the harbor," the keeper replied, quoting an ancient truth, "but that is not what ships are built for. You must go back. You must test the lock." Elias walked back to Okovan alone. The journey seemed shorter this time, though his steps were heavier. As the silhouette of the city rose from the mist, the familiar knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. The city was a machine of noise and demand, and he was a cog returning to its place. He reached his shop at midday. The sign "Elias the Mender" creaked in the wind. The windows were dark. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was stagnant. The dried blood was still on the floorboards, a dark rust-colored stain shaped like a map of his breakdown. The unfinished vase sat on the table, exactly where Mrs. Gable had left it, the pieces scattered like bones. Elias didn't clean immediately, he didn't open the shutters. He walked to the back of the shop, found a chair, and sat down. He closed his eyes and breathed. "I am the gatekeeper," he thought. "This is my castle." The peace lasted exactly 4 minutes. The bell didn't ring, he had taken it down before entering. But the pounding on the door was unmistakable. "Elias!" It was the mayor. Elias felt the old reflex kick in, the surge of adrenaline, the desperate need to jump up, open the door, and apologize for his absence. The mayor, the most powerful man in town. If I ignore him, I'm finished. He gripped the arms of his chair. His knuckles turned white. "Stay," he commanded himself. The pounding got louder. "Elias! Open up, the town clock tower has seized up. The gears are grinding, the whole square sounds like a dying dragon. We need you up there immediately." Elias stood up. He walked to the door. His hand hovered over the latch. This was the moment, the pivot point of his entire existence. He opened the door. Mayor Thorne stood there, red-faced and sweating, flanked by 2 assistants. Finally, Thorne barked, "Where have you been? Never doesn't matter. Grab your tools. The clock is a disaster." The mayor turned to walk away, fully expecting Elias to follow like a faithful dog. "No," Elias said. The word was quiet, barely a whisper. But in the sudden silence of the street, it sounded like a cannon blast. Mayor Thorne stopped. He turned around slowly, a look of genuine confusion on his face. "Excuse me, no," Elias said again. His voice wavered slightly, but his feet were planted on the threshold. "I cannot fix the clock today." "Cannot?" The mayor laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "Elias, do you know who you are talking to? The noise is unbearable. people are complaining. It is an emergency. It is an inconvenience, Elias corrected him, remembering the keeper's words. An emergency is a fire. This is a machine that wasn't maintained. I am just returning. My shop is in disarray. I need to clean. I will come look at the clock on Thursday. Thursday. The mayor's face turned a shade of purple deep enough to bruise. Today is Monday. You will come now, or you will never work in this town again. The threat hung in the air. The old Elias would have crumbled. The old Elias would have seen his livelihood flashing before his eyes. But the new Elias looked at the mayor and saw something different. He saw a man who was used to bullying his way into comfort. He saw a toddler throwing a tantrum because his toy was broken. If you want quality work, Elias said, his voice steadying, growing stronger with every syllable, you will wait until I am ready to give it. If you want it done now, you are welcome to ask the blacksmith. But if you threaten me again, Mayor, I won't come on Thursday, I won't come at all. The silence that followed was absolute. The assistants looked at the mayor, terrified. The mayor looked at Elias, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. Elias didn't wait for a response. He stepped back and closed the door. He didn't lock it. He didn't need to. He had locked the access to his soul. He leaned his back against the wood, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He waited for the shouting. He waited for the door to be kicked in. But after a moment, he heard footsteps shuffling away. Thursday. The mayor yelled from down the street, his voice smaller now, stripped of its power. First thing Thursday. Elias slid down the door until he was sitting on the floor. He looked at his hands. They weren't shaking. For the first time in his life, he was alone in his shop, and he wasn't lonely. He was free. The following weeks were a revelation. When Mrs. Gable returned with another emergency regarding a chipped teacup, Elias told her his waitlist was 2 weeks long. She huffed, she puffed. She gossiped about his arrogance, and then she put her name on the list. Because she knew deep down that Elias was the best. When Brom came banging on the door at midnight for a rush job, Elias simply didn't answer. He lay in his bed, listening to the knocking, and turned over to go back to sleep. The next morning, Brom was grumpy, but he had fixed the problem himself. Elias lost friends. The people who only liked him for what he do for them faded away. They were like parasites falling off a host that had finally developed an immune system, but he gained something else. One afternoon a young girl came into the shop. She held a broken wooden doll. She didn't demand. She didn't ask for a favor. She simply asked, "Can you teach me how to fix it?" Elias looked at her. He looked at the clean shop, the sun streaming through the clear windows, the half-eaten lunch he was actually enjoying. He had time, he had energy. "Yes," Elias smiled. "I can." He spent the afternoon showing her how to glue the joint and sand the wood. He didn't charge her, he didn't do it out of obligation. He did it because he wanted to. It was a gift, not a tax. That evening, Elias sat by the window. He had fixed the mayor's clock on Thursday, and it ran better than it had in 50 years. He had restored Mrs. Gable's teacup, and she had paid him full price without a single complaint. He realized that by becoming less available, he had become more valuable. By respecting his own time, he had forced the world to respect it too. He picked up a piece of wood and began to whittle. He wasn't making a commission. He wasn't fixing a mistake. He was carving a small, wooden bird. Just for the joy of seeing it emerge from the timber. The world outside was still noisy. There were still demands and crises, and people who wanted a piece of him. But the door was shut. The bell was gone. And inside the workshop of his soul, for the first time in forever, there was peace. The moral of the story. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. If you make yourself available to everyone, you are eventually available to no one, least of all yourself. Setting boundaries isn't an act of selfishness, it's an act of sustainability. You are not a public utility, you are the architect of your own life. Lock the door. Guard your time. And watch how the people who truly value you stay, while the ones who only used you fade away. If this story helped you find the courage to say no, make sure you subscribe to Daily Motivation Tales for more stories that heal the soul. Take care of yourself, my friend. You are the only one who can.